The sun hadn't yet risen when the first blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. My boots hit the porch before my coffee even had a chance to finish brewing. I stood there in the chill of dawn, breath fogging the air, listening to the unmistakable sound of chaos breaking loose. In the distance, I could hear metal clanging, tent poles collapsing, panicked voices barking orders that no one seemed to follow. Then came the low, rhythmic rumble. It wasn't thunder. It was hooves. Hundreds of pounds of muscle, bone, and fury, thundering through the pasture like a freight train. And not a fence in sight to stop them. I sighed. I had tried, God knows, I had tried to stop this from happening. But the Karen sisters just wouldn't listen. They never do. 3 days earlier, life had been quieter, easier. I had just finished mending a stretch of fence along the south side of the ranch when I noticed the first bit of strangeness. A shiny black SUV, new, city clean, pulled up to the vacant Airbnb next door. That house had sat empty for a few months, ever since the family that owned it decided they'd rather collect passive income than maintain the property. I didn't mind the silence. In fact, I loved it. Nothing but the sound of cicadas at night and the low calls of cattle drifting through the air. But the quiet ended the moment those two women stepped out of the car. They were sisters, though you wouldn't know it from the way they constantly one-upped each other. The older one, Claire, strutted around like she owned the valley. Designer boots, not even dusty, and a straw hat that still had the tags attached. The younger one, Melissa, had a camera slung around her neck and a phone permanently glued to her hand. She narrating everything like she was on reality TV. Okay, so we're like in the middle of nowhere, she announced to her followers. We're totally off the grid, y'all. #digital detox. I leaned against the fence, watching them unpack picnic baskets and decorative lanterns. Not camping gear, decor. Pink flamingos. Foldable mirrors. Bluetooth speakers. This wasn't a trip, this was a production. I approached the property line the next afternoon with a wave and a neighborly smile. Just wanted to say hello, set a few expectations. It was the polite thing to do. Claire turned, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, and looked at me like I'd walked out of a barnyard. Oh, are you the caretaker or something? No, ma'am, I said evenly. I own the property next door. Just wanted to let you know that the back fence is where my cattle graze. Wouldn't want any mix-ups. Melissa filmed me immediately. She panned from my worn boots to my flannel shirt and zoomed in on my face like she'd spotted an endangered species. You're like a real cowboy, she squealed. Claire snorted. Don't worry, Ranger Rick. We're not exactly planning a jailbreak. They laughed. I didn't. I'm serious, I said. There's a lot of acreage out here, but it's all private. And I've got bulls back there. Big ones. Not pets. Claire waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. Relax, cowboy. We're just here for the weekend. I nodded slowly, tamping down the heat rising in my chest. I didn't want trouble. Didn't want drama. Just wanted to enjoy the land in peace. But trouble had already arrived, and it came with selfie sticks and an overinflated sense of entitlement. By the next evening, I noticed a change. The quiet buzz of cicadas was drowned out by a low, pulsing bass. The smell of campfire smoke drifted in, tainted by something sickly sweet, cheap cologne, maybe. Then the lights came, strings of LED bulbs strung between trees on my side of the fence. That's when I walked the boundary line. And sure enough, there they were. Dozens of tents dotting the field, spilling like weeds over onto my pasture. A truck backed halfway onto my property, unloading coolers and kegs. I found Claire near the fence, sipping white wine from a solo cup. This you're doing? I asked, keeping my voice even. She looked up like I'd interrupted a daydream. Isn't it fun? We invited a few people. It kinda grew, she said with a sheepish smile that didn't reach her eyes. But it's just for one night. One night, I echoed. On my land. Claire rolled her eyes. You've got like 1,000,000 acres. Don't be greedy. I didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, I pointed to the dirt trail carved by tires through my hayfield. That's trespassing. And you're damaging my property. Melissa wandered over mid-livestream, speaking to her followers. And here's the neighbor, guys. He's super intense. He's worried about, like, cows or whatever. She turned to me. Hey, cowboy, smile for the camera. I turned and walked away. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I knew if I said it right then, I might not stop. The sheriff didn't answer on the first call. When he finally did, he apologized. There'd been a multi-car pileup on the highway. All units were dispatched. He promised to swing by tomorrow. Tomorrow. But tonight? Tonight, I'd have to listen to 100 uninvited guests partying on land they didn't own. I'd have to watch while they stomped over soil I'd spent years nurturing. I'd have to stand by while they treated this ranch like their personal Coachella. At around midnight, someone set off fireworks. The bulls, penned far in the back pasture, bellowed in protest. I sat on my porch, staring out into the dark, jaw tight. At some point, Melissa posted a selfie with the caption, "Backwoods Bash. Owners chill. Or asleep. Face with tears of joy." I wasn't asleep. The next morning, I made one last attempt. I walked into the middle of the camp, stepping over red cups, empty snack bags, and half-burned logs. People were waking up, groggy and hungover, some still snoring in hammocks. I found the sisters near a makeshift breakfast table made from a flattened cardboard box. "You've got until noon," I said. "After that, the bulls are coming through this pasture." Claire didn't even look up from her mimosa. "Oh, please. We'll be out by sunset. Just let people pack up." I shook my head. "Noon. That's not a request." Melissa chimed in with a mocking drawl. "Or what? You'll sick your cows on us." I turned and left. Behind me, someone laughed. By midday, not a single tent had moved. More cars were arriving. Some had rooftop canopies. One guy had a generator strapped to a trailer and was blasting country remixes from a speaker the size of a small fridge. And somewhere in the center of it all, the Karen sisters clinked glasses like they'd just closed a business deal. They'd made their choice. So I made mine. I spent that evening preparing. Quietly. Methodically. Out back, the bulls shifted restlessly. They didn't like the sound or the smoke. They were used to calm mornings and quiet dusk. I walked the perimeter with a bucket of feed, calming them, guiding them closer to the main pasture gate. That gate hadn't been opened in 6 months. But tonight it would swing wide. I checked the trail cams, 5 angles. High resolution. Night vision. Every tent, every car, every idiot with a phone recording their own stupidity. I didn't sleep that night. Just waited. Watched the clock tick past 3. Then 4. Then, as the first sliver of pink cracked the horizon, I unlatched the main gate and stepped aside. They didn't charge, not at first. Bulls don't stampede for fun. But the unfamiliar smells and noises had already stirred them, and once they caught scent of burned charcoal and artificial vanilla, they moved. Slowly at first, then faster. Horns lowered. Snorts loud. Earth vibrating. By the time the first tent collapsed under the weight of one curious bull's hoof, the camp was stirring. Confused. Then screaming. My camera caught the exact moment panic erupted. People ran in every direction, stumbling out of sleeping bags, dropping phones, losing shoes. Someone dove headfirst into a kiddie pool. Another tried to hide behind a camping chair. Claire shrieked as she slipped in a pile of overturned salsa, one boot flying into the air. Melissa live-streamed the chaos until a horned shadow crossed into her frame and she bolted, dropping her phone mid-broadcast. And I sipped my coffee. Still hot. Still waiting. I'd given them warnings. I'd given them grace. But the land had a voice too. And that morning, it finally spoke. And the Karen sisters? They finally listened.
Claire was the first one to knock on my door. She looked nothing like the woman who had flippantly dismissed me just 24 hours earlier. Her hair, once sleek and Instagram-ready, was a tangled mess plastered to her cheeks with dried sweat. The brim of her designer hat had been torn, and there was a smear of something green, maybe guacamole, maybe grass, streaked across her once pristine white blouse. The look in her eyes wasn't rage or indignation. It was panic, stripped of all its makeup. "You have to stop them," she gasped. "They're destroying everything." I leaned against the frame of my front door, coffee in hand, still warm from the thermos. My porch was high enough to see the field stretch out in panoramic view. The makeshift camp now a torn-up battlefield of crushed tents, overturned coolers, and fleeing influencers. My bulls weren't hurting anyone. They weren't interested in people unless provoked, but they were enormous, intimidating creatures, pawing and snorting as they explored the strange intrusions in their grazing territory. "Looks like your guests are getting the real backwoods experience," I said deadpan. Claire's voice pitched higher. "One of them knocked over our sound system. That thing cost more than your entire truck." I sipped my coffee and offered a shrug. Shouldn't have set it up on private land. Melissa was next to arrive. Her hands were trembling as she clutched her cracked phone, her screen completely shattered from the fall. Unlike her sister, she wasn't trying to reason with me. She was mad, embarrassed likely. Her followers had watched the entire mess unfold before her stream cut out. Last I checked, her latest video was titled "Real Life Stampede," not clickbait. "This is harassment," she snapped. "We could sue. You let wild animals loose on people." "No," I replied calmly. "I opened a gate on my land. You're the ones who invited yourselves." A few more partygoers trickled up behind the sisters. Most of them looked too stunned to speak, carrying duffel bags in one hand and what dignity they could salvage in the other. One guy still had marshmallows stuck in his beard. Another kept looking over his shoulder, like a bull might materialize behind him any second. "This is a disaster," Claire muttered. "No," I corrected. "This is a consequence." They stood there, silent for a moment, absorbing it all. The silence was broken by a dull thunk from the pasture. One of the bulls had knocked over a barrel someone had tried to repurpose into a grill. Claire flinched. Melissa stared down at her phone, like she could will the screen back to life. Then Claire's expression shifted, just like that, back to the performance. She straightened her shoulders, adjusted her broken sunglasses like they still carried weight, and pointed a manicured finger in my face. "You're going to pay for this. You think you can scare us with your livestock? We'll get lawyers. You've messed with the wrong people." I didn't flinch, didn't move. I just stared at her, solid and quiet like the land itself. "You messed with the wrong land," I said simply. Then I stepped back inside and shut the door. The rest of the day was filled with a kind of chaotic ballet. The trespassers scrambled to vacate, stepping over crushed gear and ripped tarps, shouting at each other about who packed what, while my bulls, placid now, wandered lazily near the fence line, occasionally mooing as if to remind them this was their domain. I watched from the porch as car after car peeled away, dragging trailers, leaving behind streaks of torn grass and deep, ugly tire tracks. It looked like a battle zone. Trash littered the ground, plastic cups, confetti, abandoned selfie sticks. And on the edge of it all, the Karen sisters remained. They hadn't left. Not entirely. Instead, they huddled in the SUV, arguing so loudly I could hear them from where I stood. Claire wanted to go scorched earth. She ranted about reputation, about damage control, about press releases, and TikTok spin. Melissa, in contrast, seemed more worried about the digital fallout. She'd been trying all day to connect to Signal, bouncing from spot to spot in the field, holding her broken phone up to the sky like she could catch a Wi-Fi signal from the clouds. That night, I saw headlights flash across the gravel road as they finally departed. And for the first time in 2 days, the valley was silent again. No bass, no screaming, no ring lights or impromptu photo shoots. Just the hum of crickets, the groan of distant wood settling, and the soft snorts of cattle bedding down under the stars. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated, but instead I just felt tired. It wasn't just about my property being overrun or my boundaries being disrespected. It was something deeper, something that crawled under the skin. That someone could show up uninvited and claim ownership of something they didn't even understand. But karma doesn't need a calendar. The fallout began the next morning. I was halfway through hauling feed when my phone buzzed. One of the ranch hands had sent me a link. "You have to see this," he wrote. I tapped the video open. Melissa's latest upload had gone viral. Not in the way she wanted. She titled it *, Our Rustic Nightmare, Bull Attack. *, but the tone wasn't dramatic or sympathetic. The comments had taken on a life of their own. "LMAO, you trespassed and got what you deserved. Did they just throw 100 people onto private land? I'm here from Cowboy Cam's footage, epic justice." And that's when it clicked. Someone else had been filming. I checked the tags. Someone named Ranch Revenge had uploaded an edited clip, night vision, trail cam footage of the bulls storming through the tents, overlaid with dramatic music and cutaways of the Karen sisters smugly dismissing my warnings. It was cinematic, ruthless, and beautiful. The internet was eating it up. And at the center of it all was the Karen sisters, looking less like influencers and more like entitled intruders caught in high definition. Melissa's followers were abandoning her in droves. Sponsors pulled out. She posted a tearful apology video that only made things worse. Comments flooded in. You lied about the attack. You exploited someone's land for content. This isn't cancel culture, it's consequences. Claire, meanwhile, tried to pivot. She wrote a scathing blog post about aggressive livestock and rural hostility, claiming she was the victim of an unprovoked assault by a man with uncontrolled animals and a vendetta. The problem: the blog was instantly debunked. Turns out, several campers had also taken footage. Of her laughing. Of Melissa live streaming. Of people climbing over my fence like it was an amusement park. And one particularly damning shot, Claire giving a toast, with my "No trespassing" sign visible in the background. They weren't victims. They were viral villains. Still, I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't even comment. I kept to my routine, same as ever. Feed the bulls. Check the fences. Repair the ground where their tires had chewed through the soil like rats. But I did make one change. I sent the footage to a lawyer. See, what most people don't realize is out here, land isn't just property. It's livelihood. And when someone trespasses, leaves damage, or disrupts livestock, it's not a prank. It's a liability, and it comes with very real legal weight. So I filed a claim. Quietly, thoroughly. Photographic evidence, repair receipts, estimated cost of pasture damage, even the additional veterinary checks for the bulls due to behavioral changes from stress. Total, just north of $18,000. Claire responded with a cease and desist letter from some Beverly Hills lawyer who probably hadn't seen a cow in his entire life. My lawyer replied with documentation, invoices, footage, a signed affidavit from the Airbnb owner stating they were not given permission to host an event, let alone one that spilled into neighboring land. And just like that, the Karen sisters were backed into a legal corner. No amount of charm, threats, or followers could get them out. I didn't even have to go to court. They settled. Fast. By the end of the month, a cashier's check arrived via certified mail. The note inside said nothing, but I could practically hear the scream Claire must have let out when she signed it. The land, meanwhile, began to heal. Grass would regrow. Trash was cleared. Fences fixed. The bulls calmed down, their routines returning to normal. Peace settled back into the valley like an old friend who never stayed gone too long. But word had gotten out. A story like that doesn't stay local. Soon, the Airbnb listing vanished. Not temporarily. Permanently. Property owner didn't want the drama. Can't blame him. A few realtors came by, whispering offers and snapping pictures like they'd struck gold. I wasn't selling. I didn't need to. Because in the eyes of the internet, this land had become something else entirely. Legend. And as I leaned back in my rocking chair each night, watching the sun dip low over the hills, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Justice, like the bulls, may take its time. But when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It charges. It was about 2 weeks after the settlement check arrived that I got a visit I hadn't expected. Not from a sheriff, not from some tabloid journalist sniffing around for follow-up piece, and certainly not from either of the Karen sisters. No, it was a woman named Dana. Late 20s, sensible boots caked in dry mud, a backpack slung over one shoulder like she'd just come from hiking a trail instead of a courtroom. She introduced herself as part of a property law firm in Austin that specialized in land rights advocacy. Said she'd seen the viral videos and dug a little deeper, not because she was chasing drama, but because she'd been burned by the same kind of arrogance before. She wasn't here to sue or stir the pot. She had a proposition. There are people watching what happened here, she said, sipping a sweet tea I offered while we sat under the front awning. You may have just become the poster child for rural property defense. I raised an eyebrow. Not sure I want a poster. She smiled. That's the best kind of icon. The ones who didn't ask for it. She told me about a series of similar cases popping up across the country. City people renting outlandish getaways, turning quiet farmland into pop-up festivals, ignoring local rules and rights. Landowners weren't just angry. They were scared. And they had no idea what recourse they had until they saw a man let loose a dozen bulls on 100 trespassers and win. And that's when she dropped the idea. You should speak at the symposium in November, she said. Land rights in a modern world. I can get you a panel slot. Maybe even a keynote. I laughed. A hard, honest belly laugh that came straight from a gut. I'm a rancher, not a speaker. Dana tilted her head. You're both now. I didn't say yes. Not right away, but the idea simmered. That night, I sat on the porch again, watching the stars blink into existence one by one across the open sky. A coyote called in the distance. The bulls shifted in the dark, a soft chorus of breaths and hooves rustling the dry ground. The peace was real. Earned. But the truth was, my life hadn't gone back to normal. Not exactly. Because once your land becomes the center of a viral internet wildfire, something changes in the way people see you. I started getting letters. Not threats, though a couple angry keyboard warriors tried to frame the bulls as weapons, which my lawyer laughed out of existence, but real letters. From people in small towns, from other ranchers, from folks who had felt trampled on, ignored, dismissed. Some were just thank yous. Some asked for advice. And one, from an elderly man in Wyoming, simply said, "You reminded them we're not invisible." It humbled me more than I expected. Melissa tried a comeback. Claire tried rebranding. None of it stuck. Melissa posted a video of herself, embracing the ranch life, standing in front of a horse she clearly feared, holding a pitchfork like it was radioactive. The internet didn't buy it. One user commented, "If you listen to real ranchers instead of mocking them, maybe your brand wouldn't be 6 feet under." Claire attempted a podcast about urban and rural tensions, but it quickly devolved into condescending rants. She made it 3 episodes before the sponsor count dropped to 0. Their followers didn't just vanish, they flipped. Videos were made mocking their fall from grace. Edits with dramatic soundtracks, slow-mo shots of them running for my bulls, memes that spread like wildfire. But there was something telling in how neither sister ever addressed me directly again. They never apologized, never reached out. Maybe they were too proud. Maybe they knew they'd lose again. Either way, I was fine with the silence. And yet, not everything was about revenge or internet spectacle. About a month after the whole mess, I got a knock at the door from Roy, the old man who owned the Airbnb property where all this started. He looked sheepish, holding his weathered cowboy hat in both hands like he didn't deserve to wear it anymore. Didn't know what they were planning, he said, eyes on the porch planks. They paid in advance. Said it was a small retreat. I should have asked more questions. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything at first. Just looked at him. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. He went on. I've pulled the listing. Sold the place last week. Can't trust folks anymore. Never thought my land would end up in a viral video like some damn reality show. I gave him a long, slow nod. It wasn't your fault, I said, but it was your responsibility. Roy flinched, then nodded too. Yeah, it was. Before he left, he handed me something, a bottle of aged whiskey and a sealed envelope with a note inside. For the fences, he said, and for the bulls. I took it, said nothing more. As fall rolled in, the buzz around the whole incident started to die down. Other scandals came and went. The internet's memory is short, but what lingered was a shift in attitude, at least locally. Strangers started respecting the posted signs a little more. Drones stopped buzzing over my barn. A couple nearby ranchers even install higher fences and trail cams. I went on with my life. But things weren't quite the same. At the town hardware store, people gave me nods that lingered a second too long. The guy who runs the feed supply gave me a discount for being the people's cowboy, whatever that meant. And once when I was hauling hay, a young couple pulled over just to say thanks. Your story helped us win a case back in Idaho, the man said, grinning wide. I still hadn't agreed to the symposium, but was starting to feel like maybe I didn't have a choice. Not if I care about the land. About people who still worked it, lived it. So I called Dana. Sign me up, I told her. But I don't do suits. She laughed. Boots and denim. Got it. It was a few months later when I stood in front of a crowd that felt a whole lot bigger than it probably was, a mic in my hand, the smell of hot coffee, and sawdust in the air. The lights were too bright, the room too cold. But I told the story. Clean. Honest. Just the way it happened. I didn't dramatize. Didn't need to. The audience did the rest, gasps, laughter, even applause when I described the bulls charging through the influencer camp like the hand of karma itself. And when I ended with the line, respect land or be reminded who it really belongs to, the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous. Afterward, I stepped outside, into real sunlight, onto real dirt, and breathed deep. The land didn't care about internet fame. It didn't tweet, didn't trend, but it remembered. And so did I. Back home, things were quiet again. Even quieter, now that fall had begun painting the trees in deep golds and reds. The bulls had grown calm again, content, grazing without disruption. One evening, as I made my rounds, I spotted something near the far fence line. At first I thought it was trash, maybe one last piece of junk from that disastrous camp. But when I got closer, I saw it was a small wooden sign. Carved, not printed. Rough but intentional. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my feed bucket. I left it there. The kind of story that grows into legend not because someone planned it, but because it struck the chord we all wish we could play when someone crosses a line and gets exactly what they earned. An aesthetic. They forgot one thing. The land always remembers who truly belongs. And sometimes when it gets fed up, it fights back with horns, hooves, and one hell of a sense of poetic justice.